So we'll call the meeting back to order to continue this in open session. Welcome everyone to the school board meeting tonight. We do have a brief announcement to make before we begin. The school board has officially accepted the retirement of Mr. Jim Kukta from his position of district administrator. It will be effective June 30th, 2019. However, until then, he will be on a leave of absence until this date. We just want to thank the employees and the residents of the school district for their patience, and as this matter has been resolved throughout this process, the board has been driven by a commitment to the due process rights under the law reserved for all the Amory School District employees. The board values above all else the education of Amory's students. And it is the aim of the board to provide a place of employment where all the staff of the Amory schools will be able to best provide the highest quality of education to our students. And with that being said, we get to start out the meeting with a spotlight on education, which is the first grade Ocean Drive.
This evening, we have our first grade friends, and meaning teachers and students. They have worked on the Ocean Dive project for quite some time, beginning with a little pumpkin sale last fall. And so they're going to share their journey with you, and I thank you for listening. You can see around the room we have some of their creatures of the ocean that you can enjoy as you hear from our first grade friends.
Yeah, so thank you on behalf of all of us first grade teachers. We are excited to be here and give you a little peek into what's happening in our classrooms and what's happening next Tuesday on the 29th for the Ocean Dive. So for many years, the first grade students have a tradition of diving into ocean projects of their choice. Just after the new year, first grade students begin an inquiry project based on the anthology story called Life in the Sea. The story launches an abundance of interest and questions where students take ownership of this new exciting project. It is clearly a project that integrates subject areas and resources, as well as the hard work of our students and their parents. As the students are hard at work at school, collecting facts, organizing their writing, and typing reports, families are constructing a model of their topic. When you come to the first grade Ocean Dive, it's like stepping into a real-life aquarium. Special this year, and hopefully a new added tradition, the first graders took a trip to the Sea Life Aquarium in Bloomington at the Mall of America. What an experience it was for each and every one of them. With small group lessons, behind-the-scene tours, and a walk through the aquarium, students were inspired and in awe. The excitement in their eyes began when we crossed the Stillwater Bridge. And could be heard as we walked through the mall and saw these two-story Christmas trees that were silver, and even walking on an escalator for the very first time. And so we are very appreciative of our community and the support that we had through our pumpkin, as Mrs. Meyer shared, pumpkin sales. And so we are grateful for those who bought the pumpkins, and those who donated the pumpkins were Mr. Dave Hawkinson, Lampert Neidheiser Farm, and the Wasberg family. So we look forward. We invite anyone to come and join us from 5:30 to 6:30 to walk under the ocean walls and halls of our Lane Elementary School. So tonight we have, what? Next Tuesday.
Yes, sir.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Tomorrow's today, Monday. All right, my bad. All right, Amelia, you ready?
Tom, is there a microphone? Or you don't? No, I just wondered if there was a handheld one.
Sorry, I got it.
My name is Amelia. I learned about sea styes. They are also called starfish, but they are not fish. They live on the ocean floor. Sea styes need water like we need air to breathe. They like to eat mussels, oysters, and clams. They open the shells with their feet. Some sea styes eat jellyfish. They eat by taking their stomach out of their body and grinding the food up. Then they slurp it up. Then they put their stomach back into their body. Sea styes stick on rocks. Did you know that sea styes can't see colors? When a sea stye loses an arm, a new one grows back. They can see with their arms. They have 2 feet. Sea styes can be up to 11 pounds. They come in different colors, shapes, and sizes. They can be bumpy or smooth. I think starfish are cool.
My name is Tanner. The sea leopard is an amazing animal. There are many facts about it. They live mostly in the water. Sea leopards are mammals. Sea leopards have spotted coats and long bodies. They are 10 feet long and weigh 1,300 pounds. They can live for 26 years or more. It doesn't look like they have ears. Sea leopards eat krill, fish, and squid, and penguins. They sneak up on their prey. Sea leopards do not hunt in pods. They swallow their food whole. They hunt on land and in water. They can dive for up to 15 minutes. Sea leopard pups are born with no blubber. They are 5 feet long. They drink milk from their moms. Pups go under their mom's stomachs so they can stay safe.
My name is Levi. I research swordfish. They live in most oceans. They prefer warm waters in the winter and cool waters in the summer. Swordfish get their name from their long top jaw because it looks like a sword. Swordfish eat other small fish. They swim into a school of fish and move their sword back and forth to stun the fish. Sharks and orca whales are their enemy. They protect themselves with their sword too. Swordfish can jump really high out of the water. My name's Aaliyah. The dolphin is a cool animal. There are many interesting facts about them. When baby dolphins are 1 year old, they will be longer than their mother. Dolphins swim when they are sleeping. Dolphins can grow 8 feet long. Dolphins are gray. Killer dolphins are black and white. They use blowholes to breathe. Dolphins live around the world. They live in pods. They live in shallow water. Dolphins live in rivers and oceans. Dolphins eat fish and squid. Dolphins swallow their food without chewing. It finds its food by making a clicking noise. They hunt in groups. My name is Stella, and I'm researching about dolphins. Did you know that dolphins are mammals and not fish? I chose this ocean animal because it is cool. A dolphin has a thin nose and 3 fins and some eyes. Dolphins dolphins are carnivores. They eat fish. I learned that dolphins live in the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Dolphins' enemies are sharks. They protect themselves by swimming fast. I loved learning about dolphins.
Cool.
Very cool project. Very cool.
That's cute.
Yes.
Yes.
Next on the agenda is the consent agenda items, and I actually had the vouchers this month, and I make a motion to approve them.
Second?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, the vouchers are approved. The next, let's see here. Community comments. Is there anyone written down for community comments this week or month? Okay. If it's okay with the administrative team, I did want to go out of order a little bit and I guess take up Mr. Sherwood first so he can be on his way.
Thank you for bumping me up on the list. Sorry to disappoint, but I don't have any awesome. Although I will have to say, being an auditor, I think I identify most with the shark over there. So you guys know. So just to introduce myself, I'm Jonathan Sherwood with the auditing firm Clifton Larson Allen, CLA. Everybody should have a 2-page synopsis overview. I'll keep my comments directed towards the brief handout and try to keep things moving along here for you. If at any time anybody has any questions, feel free to let me know. I do have the full 85-page audit report, so I can hopefully dig out any answers that you need. So to start off, I would just like to highlight kind of what kind of comprises the full audit report here. The very important part that's always in here at the front page, the front couple pages of a report is the auditor's opinion. That's basically the independent auditors report to you over all of the numbers that we present, and it's our opinion over the facts and figures that are contained within. So at the start of the audit, we always plan for what we refer to as an unmodified opinion or a clean opinion. DPI won't let you accept anything but a clean opinion, so that's what we're striving to achieve. So clearly we've issued our financial statements. We have an unmodified opinion this year. That's what we're looking for. Also, in part of doing our audit, we're also required to take a look at the federal and state grant receipts that come in, and if you're over a certain dollar threshold, the federal government requires us to do what's called a single audit, which is taking a look at those specific federal programs and doing a compliance report as well. So we did issue a single audit this year, and through the testing of those federal programs, we did not find any compliance issues, so that's a good thing to report to you as well. And then also on top of the federal requirements, we're also required to file state compliance reports as well to make sure that DPI reports are matching up with the district reports. So we worked very closely with Andrew this year of making sure all of our numbers tie out to the penny, and if there's any adjustments that need to go back and forth, we have to get the state involved too. So it's a whole lot of fun that I'm glad that you guys don't have to get involved in at the district level. So that being said, through Andrew's first year of kind of taking through some of the numbers and some of the reporting halfway through here on an interim basis, it was very great to work with Andrew for this first year. Some of the auditing adjustments that we had to post this year were due to some of the turnover, and I look forward to reducing quite a few of those here in the years to come. So I'd like to thank Andrew and the rest of the district office staff for helping pull all the information that we use in order to complete our audit. So very good things to be said there. The other report or management letter that we do issue is it's the management letter comments over the internal controls of the whole district. We do have 2 looming management letter comments to be presented to you, and from a concern level of an auditor, I don't consider these high-level items. They're typically 3 major findings that we have, but we're able to reduce that by 1, so we have 2 of them here for the school district. And again, these are pretty much recurring items, just to make you aware of what they are. The first one, again, it's on a recurring basis, is limited segregation of duties. It's more or less the district office and all the way down to the individual school sites. They're realistically, there aren't enough staff members to be hired in those positions in order to completely eliminate this one at this point. So there's got to be a lot of checks and balances. You have to accommodate for things like PTO or sicknesses, where if a check needs to be issued, you're going to want to have backup systems in place, which you do, and your controls are working as they are designed currently. But if for whatever reason something would change, there would just be one person issuing checks, signing checks, or doing the bank reconciliations all together. So you just really don't have the manpower or the ability to completely eliminate this finding at this point. Again, not an issue. Your internal controls are working as they are designed. One highlight there that I always like to draw the board members into awareness is your first action item of approving the vouchers. The school board members are an integral part of the internal control process, so it's a great thing for an auditor to show up and that be one of the first items on the agenda, that school board members are reviewing and approving the vouchers as part of your monthly meetings. The next finding that we do issue is material audit adjustments. And those are just things that, as we're going through our field work, that if we notice something needs to get adjusted to comply with DPI reporting requirements, we obviously propose that entry to the finance team, and then that entry gets made as part of our audit. So it's kind of because we have to post that entry, they reach a certain dollar amount or a certain number of adjustments that need to be made, then that triggers this finding. Again, very, very common for the school districts that we work with to continue to be reporting that finding. In total, there was roughly 20 journal entries this year, and of that 20, a handful were actually prepared by the district when Andrew was working with Victor from CISA. And as they're doing their tie-in reconciliation, as we're out here doing the audit, they provided a lot of those to us as well. But then the remainder were all things that we found as going through our reconciliations. So outside of that, I already touched on the compliance audit for the federal and state programs. There was no issues. We don't anticipate finding any, so that's always great to see again. Outside of the reports, then, I can dive into the next item on there is we start looking at numerical data here for you. And again, I'm just going to keep my comments on high level, and I look at trends when I present to boards. So it's an easy way just to see what the financial health of the district has been and where things are trending. So the first fund that we hit is the general fund here. And for your reading capability, or just to be aware that when we say general fund from an audit standpoint, it's both Fund 10 of your general fund and Fund 27 of your special education fund. All of that information is combined and reported to DPI, this combined statement here. So first we have the balance sheet, and then some items that I always like to draw your attention to. That first line of cash and investments, just to see where those numbers have been trending. So in the current year, it actually increased. So from a standpoint of cash flow, it appears that we're managing our cash flow appropriately. We would expect to see that, or we would hope to see that trend increase. But one of the reasons that it did increase so much is if you look down at your payables as well, that number under the liabilities section, that number also increased. So that's more or less a timing issue of some of those year-end payments. Year-end bills, so to speak, as of June 30th, the cash hadn't left the door. We still had some things that were just left to pay. So that's the main reason why your cash increased so much. The other item that I'll draw your attention to under the liabilities is the due to other funds. That increased pretty substantially to $183,000. And what that represents is some funding from the general fund into a long-term capital projects fund. So we basically shifted money from one fund in general operations and then kicked it to the long-term capital projects fund to be used for future capital improvements. And I'll highlight that again as soon as I show you the activity in that fund. So there's more funds to be had here on that number. The other thing to draw your attention to is some of the shaded cells there midway down the page under the fund balance calculations. So when an auditor comes in or somebody that's reviewing your financial statements, they're really going to pay attention to that unassigned fund balance as well as the highlighted total expenditures, and those are total actual expenditures for the year. From the financial health of the district, they take just a percentage of total expenditures divided by total unassigned true reserves of your fund balance. And that basically equals out to the final shaded row out there for you of 12.1%. So what that number really means is that's the district's ability to cash flow itself, if, liquidity issue, if something really happens, that's how well you're able to pay your ongoing operational costs. So 12% from an unassigned fund balance actually does exceed what the fund balance policy is of the district, and that balance is 5% of a minimum 5%. So from that standpoint, you're meeting your minimum fund balance policy of the district. However, again, from an auditor standpoint, CLA does about 30 plus school districts in Northwest Wisconsin, and as an average, that average is around 27%. So you're definitely on the low end of the average. And then furthermore, in general, we recommend a fund balance policy of anywhere from 25 to 33%. So roughly 3 to 4 months of operational expense is kind of the goal that we recommend to districts. And so a lot of people question back of why you would want to have that much funding. The biggest thing, especially for you guys, is short-term borrowing needs would be eliminated. I believe in this current year, your short-term borrowing did have a pretty big uptick this year. So we had to rely on short-term borrowing at the beginning of the year, like this time frame, in order to make payroll and whatnot. Again, that's a very common thing for school districts just due to the funding of when tax receipts come in and then those payments come in. So it's not unheard of to have that. But if you do have a fund balance policy that where you've got additional reserves on hand, you don't have to rely on that. You avoid some interest costs and that type of thing. The other couple of reasons of why you'd want to increase your fund balance policy would be for bond rating. I know that there's some long-term needs and discussions of potential capital items and how to finance them. But if you have, again, your unassigned fund balance is increased, you're going to improve your bond rating. And then that also would allow you to internally finance some of that purchase as well as go out for bonding as well. So keep all that in mind as discussions go forward of here's our long-term capital needs, how are we going to finance them? The other number, I guess, to draw your attention that does impact that unassigned number is right above that you've got the assigned line. I highlight that because that number it increased pretty dramatically to about $645,000. That assigned line, what that means is there's actually a policy that the district kind of undertook a number of years ago, and that is basically the operational results of the CTE programs, which is like the tech ed type programs. So I think 2 or 3 years ago when those first started coming in, we were directed as an audit firm to take a look at what are my expenses versus what are the revenues. And that's purely based on the number of students that are signing up for those courses. So you're clearly having a lot of success running that program. The reason that it's highlighted out here individually is at the time the board or the district administrator wanted to see that line broken out to keep track of how are those programs doing. And technically, if the board would make an action and direct the finance office, you could roll that number back down to unassigned because there is no statutory requirement to keep that number separate. Basically, you want to have that funding there to continue that program, but there isn't any statutory reason of why you would have to do that. That was an internal decision. The other thing to keep an eye on, too, is the change in fund balance. You'll notice that we appear to have a very strong fiscal year here of an increase of $105,000 in the change in fund balance line. One of the main driving reasons for that is the line right above, which is the net other financing sources. And one of the reasons that number appears that way is during fiscal year 17-18, they incurred quite a few capital leases. So capital leases are basically a long-term debt instrument, and because we took out the lease, we have to incur all of that revenue in the current year, and that basically directly hits that line. So I can highlight that too when I show the long-term debt activity for you. So moving on to page 2, These are all the rest of the funds or the rest of the operational portions of the school district here. To start off, we'll take a look at the special revenue funds. And we currently roll up to three individual funds. First is the Education Trust Fund. For those that know it as Fund 21, that's the gifts and donations. If you look at the trend history from 2015 through 2018, you'll see there's a budgeted spend down of those dollars. The only remark that I have, and I was talking to Andrew earlier, is we're to the point now where in 2015 you had about $93,000 left to spend of those gifts and donations. We've spent it down to about $34,000. I just like to highlight, when you get into your budgetary modes, at this point, let's be conscious of what's actually budgeted to come out of those funds, because you've spent them down now of those gifts, donations, bequeaths, whatever they are. They're starting to dry up, so let's be mindful of what's getting coded to that fund and not rely on those for long-term resources at this point. The next line down is your food service fund, or Fund 50. From an audit standpoint and from a DPI and federal standpoint, they want to make sure that you're covering your costs. So you want to be making money, so to speak, in that fund. And then the true reserves there is $280,000, which is meant for food service capital replacement items. So if that fund balance would ever continue to decrease over the next couple of years and you get to a lower level, DPI would send you a nastygram and say you need to take a look at your food costs and what items you're charging to that, and make sure that you're increasing your revenue coming into that fund. So in this case, you can see that the trend has been built up for the last number of years, so you're in positive standing in your food service fund. Lastly there, we have your community service funds. So those are all of your Fund 80s, all rolled up into one for the reporting purposes. And again here, those are your community service benefits to the community. The big guideline there is whatever you're charging for, or whatever costs you're incurring to run those programs, you want to make sure that your fees to support those programs basically cover your cost or break even. So the last number of years, we've actually been doing a really good job of improving the financial health of all of those programs. And you're about at a break-even point. So there's positive results in all of your Fund 80s, and basically continue what you're doing with those programs. Next is item number 4 there is your debt service funds. So this is your true set-asides in order to make your future debt service obligation payments. And as you'll notice here in a couple of minutes that your long-term obligations are decreasing, so should your fund balance of your debt service funds. So the good news is you're able to make your bond payments, which we would hope so. So you're in good light again with your debt service funds. Item number 5, again, to go back to what I was saying earlier about that $180,000 transfer from the general fund into the long-term capital projects fund. That's where that number is showing up. We started off that fund 2 years ago, I believe, with just an initial $500, let's set up the fund. And then last year we contributed $180,000 to it. And to refresh your memory of what that means is that money is now tied up into that long-term capital projects fund for a set amount of time, and is now restricted exclusively for the use of capital replacement needs. So I'll have to double check exactly when the time limit of that is going to be expire, and you can use it. It's anywhere from 5 to 8 years from now is when you can start touching it. So that'll, again, go along with if you have long-term borrowing needs and local financing options, you have that ability as well. The last items that I'll talk about here is your long-term obligations. What's the long-term debt that's outstanding for the district? You'll notice again that we've been paying down our debt pretty consistently, and we're left to about $3.2 million. That's actually made up of 2 separate debt issuances. The first debt issuance will be fully paid off in October of 2020. You've got $5.9 million left to make on that. And those are all debt schedule. The debt service requirements are all managed by Baird, and you're going to be levying correctly for those dollar amounts. The last debt issuance falls off in 2023, and you have left to pay just over $1 million on that debt issuance. So that's your long-term general obligation debt. That makes up that $3.2 million. And then to jump down a little bit, you are statutorily limited on how much GO debt you can incur by Wisconsin state statute. That limit is 10% of the equalized value of all of the property that's in the school district, the boundaries. So that total limit that you're up against is 89 million, which from a school district standpoint, you're probably never ever going to get there, and you don't really want to, otherwise tax rates would go through the roof. But you're currently using about 3.6% of your total legal debt, and that's as you pay off more, that's going to continue to decrease. So you're very well suited from a long-term debt standpoint, where again, future needs, if you do need to incur long-term obligation debt, you have the ability to do so. The other items in here that are really going to change, again, I'll highlight the capital leases. It's the second item down under other long-term debt. It increased again from 118,000, and now we're up to 564,000 capital lease obligations. And again, those items were mainly technology needs, so computers, iPads, and that kind of equipment. Some of the other boring ones that I always highlight just because it causes me a lot of grief when I do the audit, but from a budgeting standpoint, in a fund balance standpoint, doesn't impact anything for you guys. But I will highlight that net WRS pension liability. That came about a number of years ago, where the whole WRS pension liability system, we had to basically figure out what's School District of Amory's share of that liability for that whole system statewide, and bring that onto our books, just so we can let people like bond agencies know how much of that is, our debt. Well, in this case, we're lucky. We're lucky that the state of Wisconsin is in such a good financial standpoint with that whole system, because you'll see that's a negative number. It's actually an asset for the WRS system. We've got like 103% funding of assets set aside to meet WRS pension liabilities. So, again, the only reason I like to highlight it is because I have to deal with it every year, and it's a lot of work for me to manage, so there you go. Outside of that, the rest of the items, they'll fall right in line with what we'd expect to see for a district your size. Other than that, does anybody have any questions or comments they'd like me to try to respond back to?
Do you have any comparison as the percentage of our general obligation of debt? Ours is 3.6. What the other districts were,
Yeah, definitely. It all depends, again, on what that individual district is undergoing. Some of the larger districts that I get involved with that have just recently gone through $100 million construction projects, they're north of 20 to 25%, which is fairly highly leveraged, and you'd expect that when they're borrowing those dollar amounts. But I believe, for where you're standing, you don't have a lot of recent capital major items. You're probably one of the lowest that I personally deal with. And anything underneath 5%, you're starting to talk to, okay, now your buildings are starting to age, and you have to have that conversation of, are you going to have a major, build a whole new facility, remodel facilities? Don't care what the discussion is. Usually those topics involve long-term debt, and you're at a point where you have the ability to go out and, if need be, borrow for those projects.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, I guess we'll move backwards now to administrative department reports, and we'll start with Mr. Dirkler.
Okay. This week, myself and Aaron Hosking and Chelsea Whitley, Tracy Hendrickson, Andy Deeb, and George Sigsworth are going to the Wisconsin Association of School Board Convention in Milwaukee. A lot of networking opportunities there. A lot of folks from a lot of districts that we don't ordinarily run into, because the whole state's sort of there, and an opportunity to see a lot of your legislatures in Madison. So that'll be or in Milwaukee, that are from Madison, and that'll be happening this week. Mr. Benson and the rest. I'm not sure which order you want to go in, but you're up.
All right. I think I'll just mention freshman registration night. We have freshman registration night coming up on February 11th, and that is for 8th grade students and their parents, and they'll be at the high school, and they'll learn all about scheduling and putting together their plans for the next 4 years, get a tour of the building, learn a lot about different programs. It's a pretty exciting night. We had a pretty busy week. We kicked off our Project-Based Learning Genius Hour last Friday, and that was really exciting to see the students start to talk a little bit about a passion project and how to get a driving question and work forward from there. So that was pretty exciting. Today, we had in-service for our staff. So those tend to be really, really busy days for us, as there's a lot of different learning going on all around the district. At the middle school, we spent it on special education, primarily looking at inclusion. And we had a speaker from C11, Allie Call, who came in, who I just found out today she graduated 2 years from behind me in the same high school, and I didn't know that because she had a different name now. But so we talked a lot about that. That was fun. We talked about best practice and team teaching and differentiation, and really drilling down to hit one of our biggest concerns is to close the gap for various learning populations. And so we're taking a look at how can we best do that and what are the best practices and research there. And it was great to get good discussion with staff. We have a couple of new programs coming up. We have a Science Olympiad team. This is the first year we've ever done that. We have a lot of different science activities and things for kids. This was kind of similar to DI, but we have a Science Olympiad team from grade 6 and 7. And Ariel Humpel and Daniel McCall are coaching that group, and they have regionals coming up in February in Boyceville, so we're excited for that. And a mailing will be coming out to parents real soon, and I just want to make sure they're aware. Invitations to come to a grading policy meeting on February 18th or the 21st we're having in the evenings for anyone that would want to learn more about what's going on with grading and our movement in the middle school towards a standards-based report card. And we also have a parenting workshop with an invitation coming out for February 21st. We're sponsoring a district-wide workshop on teen mental health for parents. And so we're excited for that opportunity for parents to come in and have that discussion. And also we're going to include the Youth Risk Behavior Survey, letting parents know that the survey is coming up at the middle school. And that's a survey that drills down into student choices and risk behaviors that they may be involved in. It helps us understand our students better so that we can get research and grants and things to counter that. So a lot of stuff going on at the middle school. Any questions about that? No?
I think the Science Olympiad includes, it's 6th, 7th, and 8th graders.
Right. I'm sorry, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, but I have the two teachers are 6th and 7th grade teachers from science that are chairing it. Yep.
And then the February 18th and 21st, the grading policy standards, is that something that you're going to bring to a future board meeting? Or?
Yeah, right now what we are doing is researching it for the next year and a half, and so we're hoping to move forward with a standards-based report card at the middle school and why. What we're basically trying to do is have parent meetings so that we can get input from them and explain to them a little bit about as we move to the PLC process, what is it? How would a standards-based report card have a better indicator of mastering that standard as opposed to just a traditional grade? And so we're going to talk about that. Once we have, right now it's basically, we haven't even decided that yet on what we're hoping to do, and nor do we have something that we can bring to the board yet. But what we're doing is explain to parents how we're grading right now and where this could go. But yeah, I think we have a whole team coming on, and we would love to come in and when we're a little bit more prepared to deliver to the board so that you're better understanding of what we're doing.
Okay.
All right, I've got 2 items that I'd like to highlight. The first is Prairie Fire Theater was here a week ago from this last weekend, and they did Tom Sawyer. We had 84 students that participated between 3rd and 8th grade, and it's always very successful. We love having Prairie Fire here. 84 kids showed up to audition, so it worked out perfectly that everyone got a part, and that's always good too. But the actors are always so grateful and respectful of our kids, and it's a fun program. The other thing I have to talk to you about is upcoming. Our AIM program in February 7th and 8th will be doing a overnight trip to the Bell Museum, the Minnesota Zoo, and the Planetarium. These are all part of their studies for this year, planets and the solar system and animal habitat. And so they will be taking 2 days and staying overnight, actually right at the zoo. So fun adventure for them.
Okay, I would just like to highlight our day today. As you know, our teachers had an in-service day, and the elementary teachers spent the morning in an in-service presented by Teresa Stanley from CC 11, learning about the next step forward in guided reading. Guided reading is a framework that we use with our early readers. And she was fabulous. It was 4 hours, and it just flew by, and the teachers were just so excited about what they learned. Every teacher was presented with a book that they can refer to throughout their upcoming they'll use it a lot in their teaching, in their daily teaching of reading. The afternoon was spent with curriculum work. The teachers were able to self-direct their afternoon, so they were given a list of options: curriculum, technology, makerspace, reading strategies, continuing digging into the book that they got this morning. So it was a very, very good teacher in-service day. So thank you for that, for supporting that. The other thing, last Thursday we kicked off our reading incentive program, it was our 25th annual reading incentive program at the elementary school, and I believe it was our largest turnout. We had approximately 300 people in attendance, and the whole philosophy behind the reading incentive program is that readers read, and that is the model that we are talking to our children about. Readers read, so we want you to read, and the incentive program is to get them to read, and as they read, they earn book bucks, and then we'll have a school-wide goal. So I want to thank Carrie Hsu for her organization of that activity, and all of our visiting readers that spent time with our families, and most importantly, thanks to our parents for bringing our children to that event. Thank you.
For Social Services, a couple weeks ago, the counseling department, in coordination with teachers and administration, put together and delivered the youth risk behavior surveys. These are really a statewide effort to really inform what interventions might be needed at the high school in terms of counseling, instructional support, really anything around tobacco use, alcohol, drugs, mental health issues. And so on January 10th that was delivered, grades 9 through 12. We had approximately 83% participation rate, so I'm pretty happy in that busy environment in one day to be able to really get that much information on one day was great. So thanks to the coordination of all our counselors and everyone involved in that. It's a big piece of data, not the only piece of data, but certainly a great one to have moving forward, and to be able to compare them year after year, every couple of years, to deliver that survey to see how things change and how our interventions are affecting students and the outcomes. On the special education side, we had confirmation that we had completed our procedural compliance self-assessment. That's another great special ed acronym around IEP compliance. This one was around supplementary aids and services, their location, and under the circumstance of which they are delivered in the classroom. So these compliance efforts are always welcome because they really do inform our practice as administrators, as instructors, and those who spend a lot of time writing IEPs. They're also, as well as informative, they can be painful because they're interrupting your normal workflow when you're going back and pulling IEPs, and sometimes creating revisions based on the feedback we're getting from DPI. But it's another great marker to have participated and then to have gone through that process. It's a good thing. Highlight briefly some of the training that's happening around trauma-sensitive schools. Our staff through the PDU process is really offering a lot of great after-school trainings open to all staff on mental health, biology of stress and resiliency, and mental health initiatives. And also just want to quickly highlight, especially our counseling staff, but a collaboration with this community is notable. Really coordinating with the Amery Hospital and Clinical Behavioral Health. Our counselors are offering an 8-week social or after-school skills group, and this will target those students who've identified anxiety, stress management, and self-care as issues that they would want some further support with. And I think that's really a great program, and it always seems simpler at first to collaborate, but there's a lot of details that go into this stuff in terms of memorandums of agreement and just making sure that we're all moving forward at the same pace. And finally, the Amory Behavioral Health and the National Alliance on Mental Illness will be coordinating with them, or middle school counselors will be, to offer a parent workshop coinciding with parent-teacher conferences. So again, just to highlight the collaboration that's happening, and I want to thank our school counseling and administrators for supporting and sponsoring that.
Brad, our risk behavior survey that was just done on the 10th, obviously, so you probably haven't had time to compile information yet on that, or?
Right. DPI does its internal process, and I think it came up, I don't know the exact timeline, but I think it's going to be a few months before we see the results from that.
It's a comparison with the entire county, and the test window is open until the end of March.
Okay,
so we don't get results until April or May.
And do we release those out to the public?
We have not, but we have used them extensively in-house to better serve our kids. And they've now included a lot of new information that they haven't before, because there's new youth risk behavior type information there, because there's new youth risk behaviors that are happening. And they also, at the high school level, at least do 9, 10, 11, and 12. They used to just do the freshmen and juniors, so we have a bigger sample size. We just finished ours last week. We have 84% of our kids took the survey, so we should have a good, healthy sample size of almost 400 kids. So the window's open for a while yet.
We take ours on February 25th.
Okay.
And in the past, we have, there's so much information in there, and it's hard to not read stuff into certain things. So we haven't just published the data, but we have had, way back when, we've had even like spaghetti dinner nights where we came out with specific things that we maybe were pretty concerned about and had a community meeting. So a lot of the data does come out, but it comes out in a grant report or in a presentation or in those fashions. I think it would be very appropriate to give that data to the school board to take a look at in fashion. But.
And do we compare, like, what our results from middle school are versus our results from high school and how that changes?
We have, but the questions are somewhat different based on the nature of the age of the kid. The only comparison we have externally, though, is the other schools in our CISA, and that doesn't lend a comparison to the whole state, but it suffices for what we need. That's 40 other districts, or 38 other districts, 39 total.
Yeah, and there's some things that are pretty telling. Sometimes you see an uptick in one area that you haven't had, wasn't alarming before. But a lot of times, too, you see some consistent things where you say, well, we've really done a nice job with this. It drives good discussion with staff.
What about students? Do they ever get to see those results? To
Well-
know, like, hey, 30% of us are doing, this or that, and kind of encourage that talk amongst themselves? Is that...
Yeah,
ever been done?
well, I think like when we come with our bully program, we'll reference it. I have to check with Kathy Vincent. I know, like with her health class, if she's gotten into some of that data with some of the students. It's not necessarily something where we sat down and we laid it all out in that fashion. It's not a bad idea. If, I remember a couple years ago, we took our student leadership team and we showed them 3 or 4 really items that we were concerned about, and they were helping us brainstorm some ideas on how to counter.
Okay.
But.
Good evening. I'm here to give you a brief report on the Transportation Department. We now have 14 full-time drivers. It's the first time in 3 years that we had 14 full-time drivers.
Yes.
We also have 13 van drivers, 6 in the morning, 2 during the day all day long, and 5 in the afternoon. Bus miles for routes and activities, we put on 198,268. We use 25,230 gallons of fuel, and it's an average of 7.85 miles per gallon. Cost of repairs for the buses were $37,803.77. The van miles, that includes special ed staff using the vans. It's 152,409. I already said that. So we used 8,883 gallons of gas, average 17 miles per gallon. Cost of repair for vans were $11,186.28. Pretty soon we'll have state inspection coming up here in the next few months. As you know, we don't have a mechanic yet, so hours. Thank all the bus drivers, sub-drivers for all their work that they do for us. Also, a big thank you for Parents Partners last week. They brought treats over for the bus drivers and van drivers for appreciation of them. I'd also like to thank Bill Peterson for his support, being there when I have questions to ask, taking over this position. As you know, it's been 37 years. You see a new face up here. And that's about it. If you have any questions?
Tom, we want to thank you for all your work that you've done working overtime with all of this situation, and we know you've really been busting your butt and you're behind and working a lot. We just want to extend our gratitude because it's really an important job to get our kids back and forth safe for our sporting events and to school, and thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. You sure gotten your feet wet right away, didn't you?
Yes.
Not what you bargained for.
Yes.
Okay, moving on to the informational items now. We already had the audit review, which we bumped up. So the first item, or the next item would be the referendum expenditures update.
What you see on the screen is 3 slides, the first of which we passed a referendum in April of 2017, and each of the 4 categories of number of dollars was earmarked, and you'll see that in the first column after the colored columns in an annual budget, and the grand total being $1.9 million. Remember, this is a recurring referendum, so you have consecutive years and beyond. The 17-18 school year, you'll see the expenditures there in each of those categories, and then in the 18-19 year, you'll also see those expenditures. And remember, the 18-19 year isn't over, so that's a work in progress all the way to the end of this budget year, which is the end of June. On the second slide, you'll see 17-18 expenditures broken down by category with specific item. On the far right, you'll see the maintenance and security pieces. The items there to highlight are the family and consumer education room at the high school bleachers, and the security plan. The security plan was a necessity when you walk through the buildings. If you're going to install cameras, you have to have someone do that in order to give you an audit of that sort, but they don't do that for free. They do that for $5,000. The technology items you'll see listed there. We have a lot of infrastructure needs. If you're going to add one-to-one in your system, K-12, you're going to end up with a lot of infrastructure needs. So you'll see that there. Curriculum items, and then lastly, staff items at the bottom. In the 18-19 school year, again, work in progress. We've got the remodel that took place at the elementary, the blacktop in various parts of our district. The track has been repaired. It was resurfaced. It'll be lined once the weather breaks here in the springtime in the middle school makerspace room. The IT leases is sort of a fixed expense. We'll always know each and every year. We'll always have devices of one shape or another. And that lease is an item that we, as a district, entered into 5-6 years ago. We will always have that line item, so to speak, in our budget because we'll always have devices. the curriculum items, and then the staff that you see underneath that. And the sum total, again, is $1.9 million. Remember, this is just one portion of our budget. It simply happens to be the items that we spent in the referendum portion of our budget. This is, after all, due to the good graces of our district, passing a referendum in April of 2017, that we even had the opportunity to do many of these things. So for that, we are very thankful.
The IT leases, Sean, does that also include the, all the elementary ed now one-to-one or no?
The IT leases that you see there are for devices that are 612. The other items were purchased out of technology budget.
Okay.
So, like, in 2018 and 19, we have the IT leases at $500,000. In the 17 to 18 year, it looks like we spent the referendum money specifically on more of that infrastructure, like you said. And so did the device money then just come out of our general or our
Out of our technology budget. The decision we made as a district technology committee was, in essence, this. If we're going to increase the number of devices in this district, we have to have not only the infrastructure to support that need, but also the staff to support that need. We've increased staff, and we have dramatically improved the infrastructure. And part of that is our bandwidth. Part of that is our memory space to be able to have all of these devices. Because we are, in actuality, one-to-one and then some. Because we have devices K-12 in the hands of most every kid if we wanted to do it. Surely number of device versus number of kid. And it isn't just device, it's device used as instructional technology piece with great success. I don't know that a day goes by that any of the buildings go without using their devices pretty heavily. So it's money well spent in our district.
And do we have any concerns as to having enough or extra or?
I don't think we have concerns about enough device, though that's a technology piece. There are some folks that say we have too much on the other end of things. But the thing that we need to consider is platform of use, and we're having a constant conversation about what is our platform. Is it a Microsoft platform, a Google platform? And we're attempting to do a trial of both of those to see what's best in our best interest to have. And that really is dependent upon what you do. What happens at the high school is very different than what happens at the elementary school based on kid.
Right.
That's just a very different conversation.
Right. Is it necessary to choose one platform?
It isn't necessary to choose one over the other, but from an IT standpoint, to shoulder the load of that work, it's a tough deal because we're actually 3 platforms because we also have iPads. So that's a tough ticket for our IT to service all that need because it's a lot.
We're running both at the middle school right now. It's been pretty interesting, but I'm amazed the kids are pretty. They flow between them all really easy. Like Sean said, it was a lot of work for us. We had to tie the Google account to the school account so that they would work, and just a lot of different things like that you had to get through.
And as is the case with technology, when one platform has such and such, the other platform soon has something that matches. Google Classroom has been around for a while, and now Microsoft has Schooler, which is sort of the mirror of what Google Classroom does. So we're starting to trial that at the high school in addition to some spots where we're using Google. That target changes a lot, so it's really hard to know where to jump in.
And cost for both platforms?
The cost is not significant difference between the two. I think both vendors know that they need to be of comparable cost, but the cost of device is always going to be a price point difference.
But we have to pay for both platforms.
You do. You have license fees is what
Yes.
you do for those programs. But the device itself is the price, really the big price. Any questions on the referendum expenditures slides? This is an item that is going in the district newsletter and will be in each and every mailbox that the district newsletter arrives at here in the next month. Tracy Hendrickson's working on that as we speak.
And the teacher positions are positions that we've added due to,
Well, we've
that
added.
we were able to add due to the referendum?
We were able to add due to referendum dollars, and we added for really one big reason. It was need. And we needed to add these positions in these spots. And you could always add more, but you always have to make choices based on the dollars you have. I know, and I'm sure I could speak confidently for the other building principals, that we don't just add to add. We add because we have a need.
Right.
And the need ultimately serves the needs of our kids.
Well, I think that's great that you're putting that in the school newsletter. I think a lot of people,
Yes.
don't really know what the referendum money went towards, other than the obvious, like the bleachers and the new kitchen. But when does it come out? The newsletter.
The newsletter is earmarked for the first or second week of February.
Are you talking about the deferred maintenance too, or is that part of
The
this?
deferred maintenance items that you see in the board book, those deferred maintenance items are a summary of projects that were done in 1819. If you wanted to know what was done in the elementary, and Cheryl has a firsthand knowledge of that because she's been involved in many of those decisions, you're looking at new ceiling tile, you're looking at the grid being painted, terrazzo, the entryway being remodeled, lighting, carpet tile in the office and new workstation, lockers, the new wood gym floor, drinking fountains and bottle fills, and lastly the sound panels above lockers and in the cafeteria. I don't spend my days in the elementary. I do a drop-off and a pickup, and I know it's been a marked improvement. Perhaps, Cheryl, you want to speak to that? I know it's been a dramatic improvement.
I think everything there was very much needed. The building was 55 years old, and I think the things the children enjoy the most are the new lockers. Now they can actually fit in them. Not that we want that, but
I was going to say, what are you talking about?
I won't tell my kids.
when they need to calm down, sometimes that's their calming spot.
Okay.
But they do love the lockers, and the new wood floor is just beautiful, and it's enjoyed by the entire community. The gym is used all the time, so that's very nice. And the entryway is gorgeous. So, thanks to George for coordinating the remodel. He worked very closely with me, and it was a huge success.
I do have to say I stepped in there for the first time since it was done the other day, and the kids wouldn't realize this, but as an adult coming in, the lighting was amazing. So compared to what it used to be when my kids were there, and then what it is now, and it's honestly just like more inviting. It's brighter. It's not dull, and for the kids, it's really just kind of an uplifting lighting. So I really have to say, and I think we went with LED too, right, to save overall money. But I do have to say the lighting really caught my attention.
The foresight that our forefathers had in planning that building is amazing. It has a separate cafeteria from a gymnasium. The hallways are wide. We have lockers. The terrazzo floor is amazing. If you had to put in terrazzo floors now, you wouldn't be able to afford it. It's just such a testament to the work that those school board members and administrators did at that point in time. Pretty amazing.
With two of my kids' teachers in the room, I'll make sure they know that's not their calming space. We'll hope for other methods, though they would try it if they knew they could.
Thank you.
The middle school makerspace portion, and Tom, if you wanted to speak to that, that was sort of a dead space in a way, and I was in it the other day with Tom and George. It's fantastic.
Yeah, really want to thank the board for supporting that. That was a media room. When the building was first built, they decided that small little area could be a large entire classroom meeting space without seating, and it just never was useful. And it sat empty. And eventually, of course, when you have an empty room, it becomes storage. And then we'd have to clean it all out because we wanted to, use it for a smaller thing. And finally, we just decided with the makerspace movement and trying to get kids more access to being creative, it just lent itself, and it just turned out phenomenal. So,
do you need additional resources in that makerspace so people to run it? How is that?
Well,
flowing?
we added some time to further staffing on that, just a half hour a day. I guess I wasn't prepared to answer that one, but I can definitely look further into that one. I don't want to say no, and then they're like, what? But, the purpose of it is that these kids are learning how to use a lot of these really cool tools in like I say, a tech ed class or family consumer ed class or anywhere. And then they don't get access to that machine again. And if it's something that they were really turned on to, or if they're really into music and they want to take their skills and do a presentation, they have the room and the facility and the equipment, and they can come in and do it.
Yeah.
They're the most popular location right now in the building,
Yeah.
I would say.
And
So
we just want kids to be able to access that and
Yeah.
use that as long as the money's there. And so just
Right.
any kind of support that you're looking for is welcome to be brought up. And
okay, and I think we have it open, after school. But I think if we were to look and say we needed more time, it would be something I'd have to look into and come back.
Okay.
And lastly, the Blacktop in a variety of places. I know for the high school, for instance, it was taking your life into your own hands, driving through the north and west lots, knowing which hole you were going to hit. We did a lot of work there and lined it. It looks much better. And the last item that you see there is the track was recoated. It will be painted again once the weather turns. The recommendation is every 5 to 8 years. We're at year 10, I believe, so we were overdue on that. So all those items were part of our referendum expenditures. Any questions at all? Okay.
All right, and next to the legislative update.
Legislative updates. I had the good fortune to meet with the other district administrators in our Middle Border Conference with Patty Shackner, state senator, over in Osceola, and invites extended to her by Mark Lubker, their district administrator. Patty has a mental health field background as it relates directly to mental health services and education. She's very candid in the manner in which she speaks. She's hopeful of a new governor and how that will impact education funding, though she's less hopeful knowing that we still have a divided government with our state assembly and our state senate being Republican held. She listened to our concerns about mental health, which there were a great many in our school system, and she also listened to a lot of concerns about the funding formula in so many ways being broken, and it's been broken a while. And that was on the 4th of January, and then a week later on the 11th, John Ashley, who is the executive director of Wisconsin Association of School Boards, met with all of the district administrators from CISA, and the very same two conversations occurred there. The difference is that John Ashley's plugged into more of a statewide perspective and has a direct line to lobbyists that work with the governor. And Patty Shackner is more local in that she's directly connected to this area. And both of those conversations were interesting, and they all surrounded what is going to happen at the state level with divided government, because Tony Evers is a grand departure from Scott Walker in regards to his views on education. As the former state superintendent for public education in Wisconsin, it's going to be a difference, and we'll see what happens.
And then, Aaron, you want to talk about being the delegate to the convention this week?
Well,
under the legislative update.
Yes, as Mr. Durfler mentioned, we're going to the convention in Milwaukee, and I am officially the delegate from the Amory School District for the meeting of the WASB Policy and Resolutions Committee, and I will be voting on the 22 resolutions that are being proposed to be represented to our government and that the WASB lobbyists will present. So I read them through and looked at some interesting ones, but I'll be presenting.
Thanks. And then the snow day procedure.
Snow day procedure, we have yet to use any of our snow day procedure. Perhaps tomorrow morning, we don't know. Tom and I will become friends tomorrow morning around 4, communicating about what the status of things is on the roads. We start having communication 4:30. The area schools that I have on the speed dial, so to speak, are Turtle Lake, Clear Lake, Osceola. Those would be right in our weather pattern to see where they're at. and make a decision. We want to make a decision by about 5:15, 5:30 about whether you're going to do a 2-hour delay or out and out cancel school. We need to do that because buses are on the road shortly thereafter. If we're going to do a delay, certainly things look a little different time-wise. We are going to be for sure making a decision by that time if it's a no school day altogether, because we know parents have child care needs that they have to attend to. If it's a 2-hour delay, remember that we still have a grab-and-go breakfast offered at all schools, so when kids show up, they'll still have something to eat. If it's a cancellation of school, we need to make a decision by 1:30 or 2 if we are going to have after-school activities. We got to make arrangements for those kids because K-12, we've got a lot of kids who are involved in stuff. They're not always done at 3:12 and on their way home. Clubhouse, conversation with Nina about that. She doesn't always follow exactly what we're doing as a district. Clubhouse sort of functions as a different entity in that way, so we'll have communication surrounding whether Clubhouse is closed or not. I don't know what the weather is going to be tomorrow, but it doesn't seem ominous. It seems like we'll have some standard fare weather, winter weather in Wisconsin, but who knows? We send out a bright arrow message to everybody. It's an emergency contact, so everyone's going to get that call. And the reason we do it to everybody is because we don't know where kids are staying on any given night. It could happen to be a Monday situation, and they were at so-and-so's house on the weekend, and we wouldn't hit them otherwise, and they may come to school, and we don't want that. And Tracy will put it out on all of our social media sites, and then we'll run it on the screen. I sort of have an affinity for that because I remember growing up with my brothers watching the screen and waiting for my school to be called. My kids haven't gotten there yet, but I think they will someday, understanding how exciting that is. So questions about our snow day policy or protocol, I should say.
All right, next up is the Montessori expansion to 4th grade by Ms. Meyer and Schock.
Do you want me to go up there and talk? Doesn't it matter? Okay.
Whatever your comfort level is.
Okay.
We made Tom go up, but we'll let you stay.
I'll go up because
Okay. I'm here, I'm back again, she's back, to talk about Montessori and expanding our program again. And you're probably wondering why we just expanded the program. So if we, one thing I think we need to say about the school district of Amory, which we all know, we are an amazing district that has a great vision. And our vision is to innovate, lead, and succeed. And in 2014, when the school board gave me the approval of beginning the Montessori program, it was very scary. It was probably one of the most scary things I ever had to do as an elementary principal. I want you to know that. And I also want to say how proud I am of our district for the support, and I've got 2 of my Montessori teachers in the back who have weathered this long meeting. Kathy Peters and Brenda Kronk are our lower elementary Montessori program teachers. They teach 1st and 2nd, and the next growth is 3rd grade, and that's that plane of development, which we'll get to. So go ahead. And you've seen this picture before, but I just want to remind you that Montessori is based on Maria Montessori, and Maria Montessori discovered that children love to be engaged in self-directed, purposeful activities, and they learn best when they can choose their own pursuit. And we have found that to be true in our Montessori program. The children love it. It's recess time, and they beg to stay in from recess. Is that true, girls? It's amazing. They love Montessori. So there's planes of development. I've talked to you before about them. We have the Children's House. That was the initial plane of development where we started the 4KK in 2015, I believe. Then the lower elementary, what we did is we grew year by year by year. We didn't have a crystal ball. We didn't know if the Montessori program would be popular to our families. We didn't know if it would be a successful program, but we did everything we could to make sure that it was. So that brings us to this next slide, which is the slide that you have seen before, and it goes back to 1617, I guess, was when we began the Children's House. And if you follow a color, it takes you through the growth model. So our pioneers are the 4K and the K, but I'm going to follow the 4K gold. We started with 24K students. The following year, they became kindergarten students, and then we added our kindergarten friends needed a place to go, so we started the next plane of development. And the plane of development is 1st through 3rd grade. So as you follow that all the way through, perhaps I'll follow the black now. So our 4K friends became 1st graders. Then this current school year, we added our 2nd grade classroom, and that was the addition of Mrs. Cronk, and that created a multi-age 1st and 2nd grade. And in, you can see as noted, in September of 2018, you, as the school board, approved the growth to the 3rd grade level within that 2nd plane of development. So beginning next year, the 1920 school year, we will have that our 2nd plane of development will be complete. We will have the 1st through 3rd multi-age program. Now, as soon as you gave approval for that program, the teachers and I had a family evening with our 2nd grade families, because we wanted to let them know that this had been approved, and we wanted to answer all of their questions and concerns that they might have regarding the implementation of the 3rd grade, because 3rd grade will be, because it's a plane of development, the 3rd grade Montessori will be in the elementary school. In November, we had the parent meeting. We wrote the parents and told them in December that we would be contacting them for a commitment. And last week, I believe, the week before, Kathy, Mrs. Peters, and Mrs. Cronk contacted all of their 2nd grade families. And at this point in time, we have enough to complete a 3rd grade, which is the 1920, looking at next year, the 3rd grade plane of development. One of the concerns at that parent meeting was we love Montessori, we want Montessori, but we want to know, what is the next step in Montessori? Will the board commit to the next plane of development? And at that meeting, I told them that I would be presenting to the board in January that next growth plane, what that would look like, and then asking for action, not tonight. Not tonight. So if you look on the next slide, what I am showing you is the 2021 school year. So we're in 18-19, right? 19-20, we're adding 3rd grade. 2021 would be that next plane of development. And we would begin with our 3rd graders who will turn into the 4th grade. And just like we grew the other program, we would have all our 4th grade Montessori kids in one room. The next year, you would add the 5th grade, and the next year, you would add the 6th grade. Now, none of us have a crystal ball. We don't know what it will look like at that point in time, but I can tell you that you have some Montessori believers, and they wanted to organize a group to come tonight to show their support. And they said, I don't think it's necessary at this point in time. I want to give the board an opportunity to ask questions and to just see what that would look like. Again, we don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. After 3rd grade, will we have families that want to continue? What I do know is that there are families that will not continue if we don't move forward into 4th grade. So my my position on it is we're a district that has a great vision. We offer choices to families. This has been a great choice. The families love it, and I think we need to continue to grow the program as long as it continues to show the kind of successes that it does show. And I can tell you that we just finished with our benchmarking we're still benchmarking, but I did check our Montessori, and our Montessori children are doing very well. Questions?
So how many kids are involved today?
Oh boy, Children's House Anna. So we've got about 20 per grade level. So 24K, 20, 40, 60, 80.
80 kids?
80 kids.
So what is like the 5-10? That's not fifth grade, 10 students? That's
Yes.
Like that. It's fifth grade, 10 students.
Yes. So, and again, those numbers are just estimated numbers. We start out with 20 in both 4K and K, very popular grades. We can't fill all the slots. We could add a whole nother children's house very easily, but the goal, in my mind, has been to grow it vertically before horizontally, but we could grow it horizontally as well.
Okay, so that was a question of mine then. So we have kids leaving then, and do we have reasons why those kids are leaving before they get to that next plane, like first grade, second grade?
Sure. There are different reasons. We haven't lost a lot. So, for example, this year we lost a child at the beginning of the school year who moved. So that has been a reason to move. I don't know, ladies, do you have examples? Again, we don't lose, most of our kids are staying.
40%. So so if you lose 4 kids, 5 kids, going from like say second grade to third grade, if there are other third graders who want to start Montessori, is that possible? Can they start at any point?
Yes. We purposefully started our numbers higher at 20. Our class sizes at the elementary are between 16 and 18. We started higher, number one, because it's very popular and parents wanted it. Number two, to protect the growth as we move forward, because you can't help when families move out. And we've had very few families leave the program but stay in district. We've had them, but very few.
Are you concerned if you expand to third grade that some parents might switch over to AIM? Because AIM is a wonderful program as well.
It's a beautiful program. That has already been determined. Okay. So those families that are in Montessori want to stay in Montessori.
For third grade.
For third grade. Yeah, third grade is a done deal.
So then it's the transition out of fourth grade. Right?
Yes.
That will be discussed.
Yes.
If they're going to commit to staying in it for the next plane.
Right. Exactly.
No, we have met twice as a principal team, as an administrative team, about the plane of development that is up through third grade, and we've met twice in regards to the 4-6. And there are logistical issues of staffing and scheduling that we're looking at in regards to kids that are third grade that are staying at elementary as opposed to going to the intermediate. And then the second conversation, albeit further down the line, but we've had the conversation, what does that look like in sixth grade? And I don't want to steal Tom's thunder, but the reality is those are subject level experiences rather than grade level experiences, and there's a logistical item there to take care of. So we haven't figured it out yet.
The concern I would have at sixth grade is if you, for an example, if you move it into fourth grade, you have 20 kids, you have one less fourth grade classroom. The fourth grade teacher that wants to maybe goes over to do Montessori. When they hit sixth grade, I have a math teacher, an English teacher, so that, their subject level, I can't pull them out and say you're going to go down and teach sixth grade. So if you move forward on it, when you hit sixth grade, you're going to have a staffing concern or stepping decision to make about funding that, because it's harder to move it from the way that our schedules run.
even moving it to fourth. There still is,
Yeah.
there's staffing.
Which is why we're
We-
meeting again and why this is about informational, because we have to make sure we account for all those factors.
But I'm gonna be the devil's advocate to that, because when Montessori became Montessori at the elementary, I had staffing issues and I had scheduling issues. Same thing. You need to, if you embrace it and the families want it, our 4K and K families were pioneers in my mind. They trusted the district, and now their kids are going into third grade. And so I'm very respectful and cognizant of the concerns, but I also know that that we need to meet that we committed as a district, in my mind, to that program.
To go K-3. The concern I have is it's not funding or staffing the Montessori. It's staffing the building you're pulling the teacher out of, because then you don't have a math teacher or an English teacher that teaches that only subject in the building for that grade level. They're licensed by discipline, not. So there's a concern there on moving that person down. That would be the
So this discussion is why we're meeting the first week of February and why it's about a decision. We don't want to do it without having the facts in place.
And we have research to do. My staff has not done anything with Montessori. And when you're looking at the next plane of development, that totally includes the intermediate school. And so we need to, as Leon did with their staff, is to go out and look at this next plane of development and see how it's working and how it can be implemented if that's what you choose to do.
And so, Cheryl, that you said that you have commitment, it looks like, for 6 of these third graders now in the 1920 school year that we've already approved.
We have commitment from
16 of
16.
16
for third grade.
16, possibly 18.
Okay, and then, so and you said that there was some that have not committed because of this next plane of development.
That's the
How
2.
many more do you anticipate that going up? And then if they say they're committed, then are they locked in, or do they still have the chance to not be locked in once we go forward to 4th and 5th?
It's a 1-year commitment. So our third grade is a year commitment. And then you look at 4th grade is the next leap of faith, you might
For third
say.
grade, my conversation with Cheryl is we have 16 firm commitments for that, and the other 2 are not. But that number is not coming down from 16 in my conversations with Cheryl. That's a pretty solid number.
That's correct.
Well, and maybe at 6th grade with your Genius Hour and Makerspace, that kind of ties in with the structure that you need for the subject areas. And is that going to be the transition into middle school in that?
Well, that's the thing, is that we made a really strong commitment years ago that we wanted to be a middle school philosophy and a middle school format that's, tied to the common planning time and moving forward with our direction. And so I'm very supportive of all different types of learning, but I don't want to sacrifice the way that we've been doing things very, very successfully. And that's what I think people don't understand, is that if I say, okay, I'm going to move Jenny Meichner down, I do not have a math teacher at 6th grade at that point. And so, because they teach the one subject, and that's just the one difference of, it would be almost an impossibility to structure it that way.
So are these families that say they want us to commit to the next plane, are they open to just the 4th, 5th, and just the 4th and 5th grade and not including the 6th grade? Is that something that they would be comfortable with, or have you talked to them about that?
With the Montessori, what we've done is we've grown year by year, is what we've done. So they want the commitment for 4th grade. We did not talk about the commitment for 4th, 5th, and 6th, but I can tell you the Montessori families that really embrace that philosophy of learning would love to see it go through grade 12.
So more
But-
conversation to be had.
It does. And I need more research on it, but my understanding is that the plan of, it's about multi-age and kids learning in a multi-age environment. And so the next plane of development is for 4th, 5th, and 6th graders. So you really need all of those grades together to make it the upper house. It would be very difficult, I think, to say we're just going to do half of the next house.
Well, my concern
But
is
I think we have to find out.
Yeah, my concern is that age difference, and I think that this school district has done a really good job in breaking up those in our buildings, that we have 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in that building together for a very good reason. There's such an age, there's not an age gap, but there's such a maturity gap between our 5th and 6th graders, and then having those kids in with even 4th graders, 4th and 6th graders together is a concern of mine that I have. So as this conversation continues, that would be one of my concerns that I would like to see
So what you'll
addressed.
see in February would be a proposal from the administrative team with a recommendation for you to choose to act on or not act on. So we have more logistics to work out. Clearly, it involves 3 different buildings.
Yes.
And it's not a small undertaking. And you have 16, if not 80, firmly committed families or kids to this experience. So
It's
more
just
to
really-
follow in February.
right. It's really important to just look at the big picture, because of course we don't want to we don't want to take away from our current programs. We'd only want to make sure that we were expanding on what we currently offer, not at the expense of any current programs.
So all of those questions will be answered next month before we vote, right?
That is the hope.
Thank you.
Thanks, Cheryl.
And Shar, you wanted to, I guess, briefly discuss the closed session policy and the fact that you want to defer that till next month too.
Yep. I have had conversations with Becky and Mr. Derfler about getting this done and written up in a format that would be appropriate to put out there and read it. So Mr. Derfler and I will be in contact, and we'll revisit this next month.
Yes, we will.
All right, on to the action items. The first one is the bidding and purchasing requirements policy, which we looked at as a first reading last month, and it was voted on to approve for a second reading. So here it is, and just a change in the dollar amounts that is authorized by the district administrator without board approval.
Make a motion to accept board policy 672 as presented.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, motion carries. The bus purchase, is that Tom again, or is that?
Tom and I are going to handle that, and Tom will let you stay right where you are. Unless the vote of the room, no, we'll let you stay there.
Brian can move the camera closer.
We can.
Zoom in.
What you'll see on the screen are 3 different bids from 3 different companies on a bus purchase. Remember, what brought us here is unfortunate circumstances back in November. We had a team traveling back, a girls' basketball team traveling back to Amory, and had another vehicle hit our vehicle. There was a fatality in that accident, the driver of the other vehicle, so we certainly can't lose sight of how unfortunate this was. Though shaken up, our girls and coaches were okay in the end. It hasn't been forgotten, I can tell you that. It was a very tough circumstance. The 3 bus purchase proposals or bids that you see there, the item with the arrow is our recommendation for a bus purchase. It's a Thomas, manufactured by Thomas, a Nelson bus. This is not $99,873 out of district coffers, if you will. There was an insurance settlement, which does leave a shy sum. But working with Lead Home, we're closer than we are just paying the whole bill of $99,000. So the recommendation is to go with the Nelson bus. And if you have questions about the specifics of a bus, I'm going to defer to Tom because he's our bus guy.
I know we're, I guess we bought a few buses that, had the nose, I guess is what you called it, instead of the flat front?
One, yep.
Yeah, so
Runs
what
on
does this have?
It's a stub nose.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, I move to replace our bus for a cost to the district of $10,373 with Tom's recommendation of the Nelson bus.
I'll second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
And please note that that $10,373 could actually be less, but it's not going to be more.
Fantastic.
The next action item is the open enrollment availability.
And Brad's going to speak to that.
So each January board meeting, recommendations can be made for open enrollment in terms of what programs or grade levels will be open to open enrollment and what limits will be set. At this point, it's, again, looking at staffing into the future. It's a little bit like looking into the crystal ball here, but we do the best we can to make a database decision based on current staffing, special ed caseload sizes, and then there's a statewide caseload formula that DPI put out several years back. That's really the main guidance that's used to inform these recommendations. Of course, again, there's a lot of variables involved: move-ins and move-outs, potential new referrals for SPED eligibility in areas, and then of course just the open enrollment. So at this point, there's just one program. It's at the middle school, and that's our special education, social skills, and behavior support program. Right now, there are open slots in this program based on the caseload formula above, and a couple of those staffing variables and a review of that caseload formula determined that available slots for this program were 28. That would be the recommendation. Of course, in evaluating any open enrollment, the IEP would be reviewed along with the specific set of services to ensure that that IEP would indeed need to be serviced in that program. And then, of course, we'd look at whether there were available slots. Only if slots were completely filled and that IEP would put us over 28, we may then at that time deny the open enrollment. Any questions?
I make a motion that we approve the open enrollment availability as laid out.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the school calendar for the, well, it says 18-19, but I think it should be 19-20.
1920 school calendar. The administrative team in the months of November and December took a look at the school calendar, and then in January, Tom Benson, myself, Aaron, Chelsea, Mike Bensley, and Jess Smith all took a look at the calendar and went through the particulars of that. Much of it is laid out for us, the holidays that exist in the same spots year to year. A couple of highlights of the calendar. We begin on the 26th of August, which is that last Monday in August. I had conversations about the first week being a full week. That's sometimes a lot for younger kids. I can speak to the high school kids. It's sometimes a lot for them as well. Fall festival and homecoming are not during the same week. It's just the way the football schedule lays out. Fall festival is always the same spot and has been so forever and ever, but homecoming sort of moves around based on who your opponents are. So those are in different weeks. We have conferences in October, as we have had. Thanksgiving's the last week of November. Christmas break plays out the way it is based on where Christmas is, we didn't feel it a good idea to bring kids back on Monday the 23rd. I didn't think that would go over very well. I don't think any of the group did. End of semester is January 17th, an in-service day, sort of comparable to where we are today to transition into the second semester of the school year. Conferences again in February. And then we move out into Easter is not noted on here, but it was when we looked at things. Easter is the 12th of April. That's the significance of the 10th and the 13th. It surrounds, so it's not a spring break, if you will, but it is 4 days there on either side of Easter. And then May is full-on school activities, ending with the last day for seniors on the 22nd of May. Their rehearsal and so forth on that day. They graduate on the 31st of May. And then our last day, not knowing what's happening with the weather, would be Tuesday, June 2nd. So that's the calendar in short form for 1920.
I'll make a motion we approve the 2019-2020 school calendar as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The 1920 school calendar is approved. The last item on the action item list is the personnel.
You see the personnel listed there, resignations, retirements, and terminations. All of those items were acted upon in closed session, and I'll defer to you, Chelsea, on how you want to address that.
I guess I'll take we reviewed this in closed session. I think Keith wanted to reserve making a motion to accept the resignations, retirements, and terminations so we could do it in open session. So I'll take a motion.
I stand corrected.
For that?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, the resignations, retirements, and terminations are approved. And with that, I don't believe we need to go back into closed session.
So we'll give to Mr. Derfler. Do you have anything?
Oh.
I do not.
So just a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
Roll call, Aaron?
Yes.
Shar?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
All right, yes.